Taking the conference forward from here, I would like to invite Dr. Abhas Desai, Rob van Overbruggen, Jasmina Kovac, and Dr. Kwesi, with Walter, we just had Walter here, to come on stage for the next session, which has to do with lungs. They will take you through an informative and wide-ranging journey, bringing together information from META Health by connecting it with biological meanings and reasons of diseases like asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, lung cancer, pneumonia, TB, etc. Please welcome on stage our experts. Come, Jasmine. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please welcome her? Fabulous. Dr. Kwesi. Dr. Abhas. Walter. Over to you, Doctor.
So, love is in the air. If it would be like that, then we wouldn't have the disorders of the lung. So this is our vision, because love is the strongest healer that we have. So now we are dealing with the lungs, and we will have a meditation after that to clear the lungs after this course. And Rob, so you are a master of the constellations. And when you work with clients who've got constellations, do you also have got clients who've got problems with the lungs? What's your experience?
Different mic. Yes, this one is working. Usually when I work with people who have behavioral issues, patterns that they want to get rid of, or emotional problems that they are troubling with, I focus on what they want to get rid of. And so I'm not really focusing on other issues, because most of us have, if you really start getting into a medical history, have many different symptoms over their lifetime. So I'm mainly focused on what people are coming in with.
Okay. So, Dr. Abbas, you have got a profound knowledge of homeopathy, and you've done the training also in META Health. So how many years have you been practicing?
I've been practicing since last 30 years.
And your father was also a medical doctor? Your father was also a medical doctor?
My father was a medical doctor.
Okay, so you've got...
for more than 50 years.
So, and what is your experience with lung diseases here in India?
Lung disease, basically I have understood, like I said yesterday, that I somewhere started correlating emotions with diseases in the very beginning phase of my practice, that is before 30 years. And the way I understood the lungs was the most essential part of or thing to survive in this life is breathe. And the most essential element that sustains a human soul is love. So whenever there is a perception in a person that there is a lack of love in his life, he has to or she has to have a difficulty in breathing problem. So I have seen it many times, and as this discussion goes ahead, I'll narrate one case which was perhaps the worst ever case I saw regarding pulmonary problem because of lack of love in life. The worst case ever. The patient was predicted that she will not survive for more than 10-15 days, and it is 28 years and she is still there.
What was she diagnosed with?
She was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis.
Can you explain that for those who are not
pulmonary fibrosis is basically, it is a respiratory difficulty. The person starts having difficulty in respiration, and slowly there is a calcification between the bronchioles. So it is just like, cementing structure in the lungs, so that the expanding capacity of the lung becomes less. When we breathe, we When there is a cementing in the lungs, the breath is like, and this is exactly what she had. Should I start with the case only? Okay. Thank
Share
you.
the case, please.
This is a case of a girl. She lost her mother when she was 8 or 10 years old. Then the father remarried. The problem with her was that even though the stepmother was very loving and caring, she could never accept her as her mother. There was no acceptance in her. And she just constantly missing mother's love, mother's love. There is no love in my life, no love in my life, no mother's love in my life. The only dream she had was that once I get married, there will be one person who will be loving me only. And the person who married her was one of my friends. And in our Indian culture, the boy goes to the girl's home to see the girl and then decide whether he will marry or not. So when he went to see her, he came to know that her mother had died years before. So somewhere he felt bad about her and decided, okay, I'm going to say yes to this girl, however she may be looking. And he saw the girl, he liked the girl, he said yes to the girl. And the worst thing happened was that after marriage he told, okay, I was also going to tell you yes because I thought okay, she's a motherless girl, I will not say no to her. This brought down all the expectations that she had for her love in life. She came down with severe breathing problem. She was admitted in Bombay Hinduja Hospital. And she was admitted there for 40 days with heavy dose of steroids. She had pulmonary fibrosis. It started with interstitial lung disease and then it turned into pulmonary fibrosis. Her breathing capacity or capacity of her lungs were only 15%. So they gave Visolon in a very massive dose and told him that you take her home and don't bring her back here. After a month, till month she was fine. Then she again got the symptom rather worse. So he brought her back to the hospital and they just discharged her after 7 days telling that this girl is going to die in 15 days. So you just better take her home. And then they came to my clinic and we started the treatment of her. Today it is 28 years. She became pregnant twice. Once she missed the child. Second time she delivered a baby boy. The boy is 22 years old and he is getting married next year now. She is still healthy. Still healthy. Taking care of her all domestic responsibilities. Bringing up the son. Social responsibilities. And the best part of this case that I really love about is in these many years she has consumed air inhaler only thrice. And that too by the advice of the physician, because in certain seasons she tends to get worse. So when I am not there, they consult a physician and he just gives that air pump. And she had used only thrice. Without any inhaler, without any steroid, without any antibiotic, any bronchodilator, she has survived 28 years and she is rather healthier than me if I see her.
So what did you identify as the emotion and the mindset behind her fibrosis?
There is a medicine in homeopathy. It has an essence that I am an orphan. I have no one that loves me. And I just, later we played the game with the medicine like it is magnesium carbonate. But carb somewhere I feel doesn't come into this much of sensitivity and this much of reactivity because carbon basically is a sluggish thing. So sulfur is very profoundly reacting. So I chose to give her magnesium sulfate. And that brought her out of this crisis. And she's still continuing with the medicine now and then, cold cough, something or this acidity, indigestion like that. But she's still surviving, walking, climbing the stairs of my clinic without stopping in between.
So her lung capacity also recovered?
Before 1 month, we repeated her CT scan. And I am shivering to say this, but there is no pulmonary fibrosis in her lungs now.
And conventional medicine says that is not possible. Conventional medicine says it's not possible. They said
Conventional medicine said she'll be dying in 15 days.
So with your profound, was that...
there is actually one very funny incident. He took her to a physician, I will not name him, in Bombay, one of the biggest Lilavati hospitals, at that time, before 20 years. And they just entered the clinic and he gave the reports. So he just saw the CT scan and X-rays and where is the patient? He told, this is the patient. Why she is not having any oxygen mask on her face? Like, she doesn't need it. Don't joke. Bring the patient. This is the patient, she is my wife, and she is the patient. He was not able to believe that this lung capacity, the patient with this capacity of lungs can sit in front of him without any oxygen mask on her face. And one thing, I had actually recording of this case, but somehow it cannot be played. So this man was so pained because of the doctor's attitude. This is how, where the attitude of a doctor, how you communicate with the patients come in the picture. There was a chest physician who used to visit her in the hospital morning and evening. The only question he was asking was, do you have blood in your sputa? Do you have blood in your sputa? Do you have blood in your sputa? The only question. As if he was waiting, if she says yes, then now you are going to die. So, huh? So
thank you very
this
much.
is how he got actually so perturbed by the medical attitude. This is not the way you should be talking to the patients. Like he was asking, where is the patient?
So,
like, okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bass. That is amazing. So I repeat myself every time again in this context. Homeopathy combined with META Health is going to be the future of medicine.
I have two cases. I'll keep them short. Not like you. You'll know those swimming pools with a diving board? You have a low diving board and you have a high diving board. I was taking swimming classes, and in one of the classes we had to go to the higher diving board and just jump off in the water. So I was a bit high. So I was a little bit scared. So I was walking to the edge of the diving board, and as soon as I was like getting closer, getting a little bit shaky and harder to walk, and I don't know what happened. It never happened to me before, but I tripped over my own toe. How weird can you get, right? And I tripped over my toe and fell down. But I fell down like this. to the side of the swimming pool. And since then I always have this little this cough. And even though since then I was scared amazingly shitless for years on a diving board, I jumped off much higher situations since then, up to 18 meters in a natural pool. But as soon as there was a diving board, I was like, oh my. So in this situation where I fell down and started to recuperate, I had this emotion, oh my God, I cannot breathe, which I really couldn't because it was such a tremendous impact. I'm going to die. This is a small case that happened to me personally, which ended well. A case on the same tissue layers that didn't end well, but it's good to realize, is my next door neighbor. She went to the hospital for a routine checkup. And the routine checkup showed some spots on her lungs. So they checked it further and they concluded this is lung cancer. And she was sent home because nothing could be done anymore. Only after a week of 2-3, she went to the hospital for surgery. And she had to get a checkup 2 months later. So she went back to the hospital for a checkup. Miss, we made a mistake. Everything is okay. Everything is okay. We made a mistake. However, 3 months later, she went for another checkup. And she found spots. Lung tumor. No, we did not make a mistake this time. This is serious. And that's the end of her story. So what happened here? In the first case, she was so terrified of what's going to happen to me that was actually the emotional shock that stuck in her system. And from that moment on, she was determined a cancer patient. She couldn't shake off the fear, and the fear starts rotting inside. Just by the emotion of hearing in this case, a serious diagnosis.
So when you have done the META Health training, and this is about the death of fear because of this first wrong diagnosis, so which part of the brain would that have been affected? Where's the brain relay? So you are dealing with cancer patients.
Yes.
That's why she's sitting here all the time, yeah? Because with every organ, she's a specialist for cancer.
Okay. So we're talking about brainstem, and anyone who gets diagnosed, there is a potential threat of developing a process like this, depending how people perceive what they've been told. So we all have different sensitivity to different things. So 5 people would be told the same thing, and some people would experience that iodine and biological program will start. So for me, the first thing when I start working with someone who has a cancer is to establish how they experience diagnosis. Because diagnosis is very often kind of a tripping place for metastasis. We know it's not a metastasis, it's a new process as a result of what they've been told. So this is the first thing that I have to usually start even before looking what is behind of their primary problem. Now, also what's important there is to work out on their fear of dying, fear of death. And it's very interesting, but usually when I start on that, people think I'm preparing them to die. And they don't want to make a peace with that, thinking I'm preparing them to die. So I have to explain myself a number of times how it is important that they have their inner peace, that it's not meaning that they are giving up, because that's quite often what I heard from people. They feel that they are giving up if they make a peace within themselves when it comes to fear of dying. So definitely we've seen many people that started that process and that came out completely out of that. Especially when it's at the beginning, it's quite safe. Now, if that's been longer, one case that I had is we worked through it, it's been all sorted, but it hasn't been checked afterwards. And after about 3 years' time, they've been doing the whole scan, and they discovered some marks on the lungs, and they said it's nothing dangerous at this point of time, but you have to be very careful once you've been diagnosed, and those marks can potentially be very dangerous. And actually that is where she got it again, and at that point of time she didn't we didn't work, she didn't call. I heard the rest of the story basically when she finished. So it's really sad story in the way that she was already out of that. It was her second cancer. The first one actually was a pancreas one. She recovered from pancreas, she recovered from lung cancer, and then because of those marks on a checkup after a few years, the way she experienced words of authorities actually affected her again at that point of time. I was overseas. She lost the faith in herself, in her life, and that was it. So that is very, very often issue with people affected by cancer.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah.
I did a lot of research on people who recovered spontaneously from cancer. Not specifically related to metamedicine or mental health, but just in general. And there's a lot of research out there of cases that people spontaneously recovered from any type of cancer. And one of the ingredients that you see often recurring is that they are in peace with dying.
Check.
Not like you said, they're not preparing for dying, but if it happens, I'm at peace with that. Meaning, that is probably one of the final fear people have. The fear of dying. And when you can resolve that, the entire body can start recuperating. I think so, because Quaker ran away. I was just talking bad things about Quaker because he listens.
Actually,
I wanted to ask Mr. Walter something. So, Mr. Walter, again, he's the chief trainer in Germany. So he's got profound knowledge also about all organs and his own experience. You also work with cancer patients.
Yes, sure.
So when they develop a cancer because of fear of death in the lungs, and we know it's brainstem, what would happen when they come in regeneration? What symptoms? What would we expect?
Quasi, I expected your question, but I'm a little feeling like outside. I'm a little feeling like Stefan. I only would like to publish what I
Have experience.
experience. And if a client with cancer come to me, I'm a little shocked because cancer is in Befehl, it's to sterben.
It's an order to die.
It's an order to die. And therefore, the patient is very in stress. And my first thing I have to do is to release stress. And therefore, I show all my clients with diagnosis, cancer, that cancer is a diagnosis. And the German word is Schwellung or swelling in English.
Edema, tumor. Tumor is just.
Nee, edema is a German word, and the Latin word is tumor, and the third bad word is cancer. And in my mind, I have no more the diagnosis cancer. And I be asked several times why I have not written a book about stories healing from cancer. I can't and I will not write a book because cancer is, in my META Health opinion, it's out. And therefore I show all client. It's not a not an apple. Oh yes, we can. This morning we trained with the orange. It's a little better. Okay, you can help me.
This is a relic.
This happens with every client who goes to the doctor for a surgery, and the doctor is an upstanding person. He make a diagnosis and he throw it to the client. And what does every client does? Fetch it. Yes, fetch it. And someone would like to keep it, this diagnosis. You see it real life. If I would...
This is me.
Yes. I lost friends because I told them your disease, your diagnosis doesn't exist. They are no more friendly to me, like Rob. But I would like to show you my exercise with the clients. Therefore, I tried the second time. Are you ready? Yes. And he took the diagnosis again. Crazy. Then I try it again. No. I train my clients. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. That's the first you have to understand. If you go to a medical doctor, don't accept what he gives you. Yeah. And then I... Okay. What would I say at next? Yes. What was your question, Kwesi?
You have answered it, because there is no cancer. So that was very good, because you reminded us about the power of language. And it's interesting that the Western world, the white Western world, talks about people in Africa or somewhere doing voodoo. The doctors in white in the Western world are the biggest voodoo masters. Okay? So what Walter just demonstrated was very, very powerful. Because alone the diagnosis from the authority, the God in white, can kill if the client makes a meaning out of it. And Walter just said he is not accepting this language. He is creating a more positive language for his clients.
Even if you look at from a purely biological standpoint, every medic knows that the body is not static. Everybody knows it's dynamic, right? It changes from minute to minute, from second to second. What they do with the diagnosis is they take a split-second image of the body, either with a biopsy or with a camera or with a CT or whatever. They take a split-second image of the body in the current state. From that moment, they start to predict the future, which is not possible in a dynamic state, because it fluctuates. By the way, I can give a session for an hour about that.
The second, I would like to share with you. I live close to Heilbronn. It's a smaller town, and 1944 we had the Second World War. What do you think? And Heilbronn was destroyed, very strong destroyed from English bombers. The town were bombed. Houses were destroyed, people in the cellar died, some directly, some without of oxygen, because it was all flammable, whole the town. What disease do you expect get the people if the streets are clean, the houses started to rebuild, they get better food, started to work again? What disease would you imagine started in this country, in this town? Pardon? Yes, right. Tuberculosis, yes. And tuberculosis is a second phase. And in my experiences, I find out, we know from a META Health perspective that we have situations where lungs are growing, the cells are growing, and we always have situations where we only have one or two local, how do you call it, spots? Nodules. And we also know the difference. We know that it's a real area. It's a Todesangstkonflikt. It's a
fear of death conflict.
Fear of my own life. And if I have only one or two, it's a fear of another person. And I couldn't remember it in my courses. Sometimes I mixed it up. At home, I read it again. Now I know it again. And now I can remember it. It's very easy to understand. Who can explain it to me why it is logical to understand if whole the area or only one point? Why? Why? From another person, only one small
spot.
I saw, oh yes?
Because when the fear is within self, we are more fearful and we will not share it. So it grows bigger and bigger. But if it is for somebody else, then that fear is not so much. We are fearful that if we tell somebody, that person, other person may, our loved ones may also get that fear. So we keep it more to ourselves, so that is why it's larger.
Yes, the background is in my experiences. Here is important to understand the biological function for such a fear. If you have a cat and a mouse, and I, as a mouse, see the cat, oh, I got fear. I need action. I need power. And in this moment, we get very, very action and function plus all of my lung. And the advantage from a mouse is to go in a hole or to be eaten by the cat. It's only a very small time. And if I would get a diagnosis from cancer, oh, where is the hole? Where is the hole? Where is the hole? Yeah, where is the hole? 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, several months, and that is an unbiological time. We have programs for very short times to go in the hole. But if I would have a diagnosis cancer, I can't go in 1 day, in 2 days, in 3 days in a hole. Only if I have a friend, for instance, Ute, she says, that's only an edema in your lung. We will look, you have always cold hands. Are you in stress? I release it with you. Yes, and if you have a problem for another person, not all function from my lung is in this cell plus. I would like to share it with you.
So wonderful, Walter. So nobody should say again that the Germans are boring.
The Germans are boring.
He's a Dutch, that doesn't count. So thank you very much. That was a wonderful illustration. And this also explains what the Russians have diagnosed and what you now see with a lot of refugees who have been traveling, even walking from India or Pakistan to Europe, that on their journey in all the stress, they could manage it. Then they arrive in the Western world. And what disease do they get? Tuberculosis. The same after Second World War. During all that stress, they were in the stress mode. And then when they come in regeneration and the microbes are present, then the work of the edema. And then they get tuberculosis. So that explains it.
I would like to share another important information. If we have Lungenentzündung, if we have pneumonia, all from us, we are thinking that must be the lung alveolus, the yellow group. Could it be, META Health practitioner? It could be only the Bronchien, die feinen Äste,
he means the bronchi.
Yes. And what color are they? Red. They are ectodermal. And also my students learn in the first hours that ache and fever can only come from this ectodermal structure, right? And our traditional doctors learn that for what is antibiotica? Antibioticum for what? Pardon? Yes, antibiotica is only against bacteria.
Antibiotics.
Yes, and this structure, you see on one moment, you see you don't need antibiotica. There are the viruses, in my mean, they are the Körper, the Eiweißkörper, they called
The antibodies.
the antibodies, and there is no use for antibioticum in this area. And if a client has fever more than 39.6, it's always ectodermal, and you don't use antibioticum in such situations. My cousin, if I came home one Sunday night, I was on my answering machine. He told my wife died. Oh, she died? 3 days ago she was well. It's possible to die within 3 days? No. I remember she has only left one kidney, and she always has problems with the kidneys. That program, KFC. Oh, she must got antibioticum. On Monday, I had a telephone call with him and asked what happened. Oh, she had a skin disease. The doctor didn't know what he has to do, sent her in the hospital, and she became a Breitband antibioticum.
She got antibiotic that covered a lot of the microbes.
And 1 day later, she was died. And therefore, it's important to know that you have a lung disease with fever. Be very careful with antibioticum. Together with the kidneys, they can kill you.
So thank you very much. So, Dr. Abbas, chronic obstructive lung disease. Walter just pointed to the red structure. So we are now in the part of the cortex, the territorial aspect of the lung. What is your experience with chronic obstructive lung diseases? Like asthma?
I have not yet treated many cases of asthma or with META Health wise, but homeopathically, I think it is even bronchial asthma is a curable disease. I think if pulmonary fibrosis can be corrected, anything can be corrected.
Can you share a case of a client with asthma? Do you have one?
I had many cases actually. Well, the same thing happened, like mother died and the father remarried. The child didn't feel any love from the stepmother, and slowly the girl developed asthma. But then she recovered after this. The problem with these girls, which I mentioned before in the first case, was when the husband said, she just romantically one day asked, what did you see in me that you said yes? He said, I was going to tell yes because you had no mother.
So did you get it? It's the same pattern. Yeah, the same pattern that there is somebody in your territory. Yeah,
right.
That you don't want to inhale the person. You don't want to get this person in your system. So you are reacting on that level. It's the same pattern. The one might get bronchitis and the other one might get fibrosis. And there we need more understanding why there is the difference in the reaction.
It depends, because here it also appeared, it happened that the in-laws house, she felt didn't accept her as a daughter-in-law. So there was a feeling of not being accepted. So repeated episodes of not being loved, that must have created this fibrosis, the cementing of the lungs actually. Even in India, what is happening suppose you have cold and cough and fever for 5 days, you go to a doctor, you go to a family doctor, he will give you 2-3 days medicine, you are not better, he will refer you to a physician. The way he will tell you, you go and consult a physician because it is not cured in 3 days. So I doubt you may need investigation. So he already is afraid. What I must be having. Then he goes to the physician. He will give an antibiotic and bronchodilator and cough syrup and expectorant and this and that. And while giving the prescription, he will tell, take this for 5 days. If you are not better, we'll go for an X-ray chest. So the funny thing is, the person is coming because he is afraid. Instead of taking care of the fear, you are making him more afraid. So as soon as he leaves the chamber, he is afraid. What if I am not fine by 5 days? What if I am not fine by 5 days? And there are hoardings. Having cough for more than 10 days, it can be tuberculosis, it can be lung cancer, it can be this and that. And he is down. And then he is worse. No pathology. But coughing, breathlessness doesn't go for so many days. So sometimes even the medical fraternity is responsible for creating such a panic and fear in the patient. Instead, he would have said, "Okay, take this medicine, you will be fine. We'll see after if nothing happens." Instead, the way they say, take this for 5 days, and if you are not better, we'll go for investigation. That is what is creating much more problem these days. That's what I feel.
Thank you very much. Rob.
I have a very specific case of asthma, and I will conclude that within 2 minutes.
We've got more.
Anyway, I was flown into the US to help a patient, and he was having asthma attacks. And because of his background, he was really good at the emotional release. So we started experimenting, and he's always for experimenting. So basically we found out what his emotional background was that might have triggered the asthma. As long as we cannot trigger, we are never sure. And for him, it was a loss of his business, his previous business. His son came into the business, stole the whole business, and took it over. So do you want to play with that? Yes. So he got back into the trauma, felt the entire energy of the event, felt the complete energy. His facial was like really angry. I said, okay, now come back out again, come out of the trance, open your eyes, and now we're going in for a break. And just notice what happens. And went in for a break. Just after the break, we started. How was it? How was the break? You know, during the break, I wanted to go for my inhaler, and then I suddenly realized what you did and how you triggered this attack. So I put it away, felt at ease, and everything was normal. So that's an example of the two phases, and when you look it up, when the asthma attack actually happens, that is after the emotional has been released a little bit, that's how you can play with symptoms, and which is an example of an asthma attack.
So thank you very much.
And I think that was the end of the 2 minutes.
Yes. Very good.
Did I talk for 0 minutes?
So, is there anybody here in the room who has got a chronic obstructive lung disease? You, Anton?
Breathe deeply.
Okay, please have a seat. I knew you would come here. And you can share your story, what is behind it, because you know everything.
It's my own case.
German or English?
I have had asthma. 2 minutes, okay? And I want only to share to you, it's not so easy to lost his old feelings. I have needed nine months to train to lose my old behaviors. And first time what I have had, I was always be afraid when it was cold and when the wind is coming, and I always react with my lungs. And the first time, and the first step, what I have to do, not to love the cold, but to know not the cold is the cause of my lungs disease. That's my inner behavior. And to change this inner behavior, it lasted for me 9 months, and now I can say I'm so free when it's cold. I can wash my hair with cold hairs and frozen hairs. I can go out and nothing is happening to me. And so happy and joyful to experience these situations. That's what I want to share to you.
Thank you very much. Ich möchte was sagen. Kann ich kurz? Kann ich kurz? So, thank you very much. I want to share also that I was invited to Egypt in September to Dr. Ahmed. I did a metavision workshop. And I think a week or 10 days before, had the asthma attack. I had asthma as a kid, and it had to do with moving, born in Germany, going to Ghana, then come back to Germany, and facing racism. That were a lot of territorial conflicts there. And I thought I've overcome it, and then there was an incident between two people whom I really like. And they had a conflict with each other. And one phoned me and told me about all the anger he had. And after that, I had an asthma attack. And my face also started swelling. And luckily, I was at Rob Ruckmary's house, our master trainer from England, and then we worked on it. And then I understood that I was in resonance what was behind this conflict. Because that conflict was a territorial conflict where the person came from a so-called developing country and the other one from a developed country. And he felt that his territory was being invaded. And because of this pattern, transgenerational, of my people in Ghana being colonized, like the English came to India, they also came to Ghana. Yeah? And then I realized, wow, this deep pattern got triggered just to listen to that story. Yeah? So sometimes it is something that you do not experience in your own biography. That is also what I want to remind you to think about when you are dealing with your own issues and with patient-client issues. Sometimes there are deep, deep patterns that are transgenerational. 3, 4 generations before that suddenly show up. And the more we solve our own issues in our own life, the more the other ones which are in the unconscious, because they are far more in the past, can come up. And that doesn't mean that we have failed and we haven't completed our work on ourselves. It just means, okay, you've dealt with yourself, now also deal with the past of your family or of your people. Yeah? And when you understand, you can let that go, that's even a bigger relief than when you've solved your own thing. So now the last words for Mr. Walter. We've got the last words.
My feeling is to go from clients to prevention, to prevention, to prevention. And therefore, I like to train in future boys and girls up from 4 years to learn these basics. But always to share stories about prevention, I think it's also very necessary. My former colleagues, when I worked as an engineer, I invited them every year together with the partners to my garden fest, grill fest with fire and so on. And a colleague came without his wife, and I asked, "Where is Heidi? Heidi is ill. What happened?" She has coughing. The next year, he always came alone, and I asked, "Where is Heidi this year?" Heidi died. She couldn't get off his coughing, went from one doctor to the next doctor to the hospital in our area, Löwenstein, the special clinic, got chemotherapy and died. And I know him, and I told this story another couple, and the man also get retired, and the wife started also with coughing and coughing and coughing, and she noted that story, and her husband was very high at the military, and he helped in the kitchen, and he did it in another case like she wanted to do it. And that was the reason, because she always got in solution and was coughing. And now she decided, oh, he was at the military, he can read orders, and now I write him very exactly what he has to do, and since that time I quit my coughing.
Thank you very much. So what have we learned? The ladies are the bosses. So thank you very much for illustrating the disorders of the lung disease in such a wonderful manner. So thank you very much, all of you.
Wow, that was a lot of lungs. Yes, and let's breathe. And that's exactly why we want to call upon Bhavin Shah for the meditation of the lungs.